Cabin Fever by Aylah Bush. My friends and I booked a cabin for the week, and it was supposed to be warm, crisp, wet, and fun. It was next to a very large lake. There were very few hiking trails up the mountains, and it smelled like morning dew, blessing the grass with a kiss. I, for one, was ecstatic when they asked if I wanted to go. Of course I said yes. Noah and Riley, the cutest couple in the world. Corey and Sean, the class clowns of the adult world. Sky, the other loner in the group. Noah's sister. Goofy, but in a cute way. Of course I loved them. They took me in. I wasn't very popular in high school. I was the weird book girl, the loner. I was teased, made fun of, asked out as a joke. I'm not really sure why, but Riley was the one who stepped up first. She told me not to listen to them, invited me into the friend group, and that's when I knew. I cherished these people more than anything. I loved them. It was a love that burned in my body, pumping through my veins like battery acid. I could feel it spread with each passing second, warming my body. It seemed I'd get a fever even thinking about them. I memorized every detail about them, every single thing. Some of the information was gathered unethically, I guess you could say. Some would call it stalking, but it isn't that. I wanted to make sure they were okay, all the time. There wasn't a waking moment that I didn't have one of them on my mind. We really did have fun, at least for those first few days. Day 1, we all drove up separately, arriving at varying times between 6 and 8 in the evening. I was the last to show up. I needed to get some practice for the day. I was so excited. It went perfectly, and I even kept my composure pretty well, too. It only made my body ignite. I had this half hope that it would satiate me, but unfortunately for my friends, it didn't. Day 2, everybody got up and ate breakfast. I was up first, made everybody eggs, toast, bacon, and hash browns. Almost everybody had eaten. I chose to eat something else, chalked it up to my stomach acting up lately. After that, we hiked down to the lake. I sat on the beach, dug my toes in the sand, and pretended to zone out on the waves. I was really just making sure they were okay, that nobody was drowning or playing too harshly. If I'd lost any of them before I was ready, I'd lose it. The only thing holding me together was how perfect this week was gonna be. The evening of day 2, we settled in. Sean had a sunburn that I was nursing with aloe. I chastised him, but everybody thought it was so funny. It was ridiculous. Sean getting hurt wasn't funny. I didn't snap, though. Wasn't quite time yet. While my interior was being torn apart, my exterior was smiling, laughing, and playing along with them. Tonight was the night. I wasn't going to let anybody ruin it. Around 10:30, I excused myself. I was tired. I laid some pillows on my bed, covered them with a blanket, and crept into Riley and Noah's bathroom. I put on a pair of Noah's pajamas, ones that he was notorious for wearing. I couldn't take Noah, but Riley? Absolutely. Especially if I caught her by surprise. Around 11 is when everybody started trickling off to bed. Noah was too tired to shower himself, understandably. He'd put forth the most physical effort today, swimming like he was training for the Olympics or something. Lucky me. Riley, however, was a total clean freak. She didn't like being dirty while she slept, showered every single night. I knew that because of my surveillance in high school up to now. She never missed a shower, no matter how tired she was. The bathroom had a small closet for towels, clothes, and whatever items you may need in the bathroom. a couple shelves in the middle, but the floor was just big enough for me to fit into. Riley liked listening to music too. If I had $1 for every time I was in the same room as her and she didn't know it, I'd be very well off. As the music played on her phone, I could hear her beautiful voice. She really sounded like an angel. Probably would have gone places. I crept out of the closet, taking every precaution that I could to make no noise. I glanced at her from around the door. I was successful. She sang her heart out, washing her hair twice. A little too thorough, if you ask me, but I digress. I stood, nodding silently to the beat of the music. Thank God she loved it so loud. Noah wouldn't hear a thing. I raised the blade, like one of those guys at an orchestra concert. A conductor. When I think about it, I really was conducting my own orchestra. The rise and fall of the music, followed by the fall of a shower curtain, a hand over a mouth, a blade slicing into skin. It was a masterpiece. The way she laid there, water running over her wounds, eyes wide with fear. I could see her pleading. I could almost hear her begging me to stop, begging that Noah would wake up. "Shh, Riley," she struggled, so I drove the blade into her stomach, earning a muffled scream. "It's okay. Don't worry. You're going somewhere better. Somewhere exactly like here, always warm and sunny. Everybody else will be there too." My calming words seemed to do nothing. Tears still pricked her eyes, stained her cheeks. Sobs racked her body. The way she was writhing under my hand was almost erotic. I turned my attention to her breasts, adorable C-cups. "Do you think they'll paint these? Your tan is off." I dragged the blade across her supple flesh, giggling softly to myself. You know, I've always thought about these. They looked so nice all the time. It really is a shame, all this beauty and talent being wasted. I let out a soft sigh as I noticed her eyes fluttering closed. "Drifting already? That's unfortunate, Riley. I was hoping we could have talked more." Another sigh left my lips as I drove the blade into her heart, or at least close enough. I sat with her. I checked her pulse. I stayed with her until it was gone. She was gone. It took all I had not to laugh, to not rub her blood onto every part of my exposed skin. Euphoria. That's the word that comes to mind. I slid my socks off. They were coated in water and blood. Couldn't have them tracking my steps, now could I? They'd be stashed away, somewhere safe. For now, I had a murder to pin. I took the knife, went into Sky's room, and locked the door. It was certainly an awkward moment for me. She was masturbating. She was understandably shocked, but I was quick to soothe, telling her everything she wanted to hear. How beautiful she was, how much I liked her, how long I'd liked her. I wasn't lying. She was beautiful, and I did like her, and I had liked her for a long time. She melted before me. I'd like to think I'm just that good, but it was definitely some of her little hormones running rampant in her body. She and I were the same. Outcasts, curious, lonely, desperate. With a voice smooth as silk, I made my way to the bed. I knelt by her legs, putting my face down until I could feel her heat, smell everything she felt for me. She looked at me with eyes filled with hunger. Unfortunately for her, it wasn't the type she thought. I licked my lips and kissed her inner thigh softly, leaving a soft trail of wet kisses from between her thighs up her stomach, pausing to give a little attention to her breasts, then finally ending at her mouth. The desperation in that kiss was was intoxicating, but I had things to do, places to be and all that. I'd made my way up to straddle her waist, and I pinned her arms above her head. She was practically begging me to. So I did. I drove the blade into her side. I'd guess between her ribs because there wasn't much resistance. She screamed into my mouth. It was more blissful than the other screams she'd planned to make. I replaced my mouth with my hand. I twisted the knife, making sure she felt every inch of it tearing her skin to shreds. I let out a gasp. This was more pleasurable than I thought it was going to be. Her waist was bucking up against mine. It wasn't my fault she was hitting the right spots. I pulled the knife out and got close to her face before driving it into her stomach. Sky, you've got to learn to keep your guard up. You have such poor taste. She let out another scream into my hand, coating it with a layer of spit. The fear in her eyes was almost exactly like Riley's. The begging, pleading, screaming internally, it was blissful. This was so much better than I thought it would have been. Riley gave up, and that was no fun. Here we had a fighter. My heart fluttered. My stomach was full of butterflies. Soon, though, Sky gave up too. Her eyes were fluttering open and closed. I sighed. I pulled the knife from her stomach and plunged it into her chest, just like Riley. This time, though, I was stroking her hair, whispering to her. I was sweet to her until the end. Sky was my favorite, really. When her pulse was gone, I stripped down to my underwear. Again, can't having them track me through her blood. I made my way back to Noah's room, placed the knife on the bed. He was so peaceful when he slept. The music was still playing, so I turned it off. Gloves really do come in handy. I double wrapped. One layer for my own protection, one layer for the blood to pin on Noah. I slipped the clothes off, examining every single inch for any hair that could have been mine. I didn't find any, thankfully. Makes my job a lot easier. I stuffed his clothes into the back of the closet, closed the doors as softly as I could, and left. It was time to clean myself off. I scrubbed my skin, washing every inch of my body 10 times. There would be absolutely no trace of visible blood on my person. With that, I went to sleep and let the rest of the night pass peacefully. The next morning, I woke up before anybody else did. I started making breakfast as I had done the past 3 days. Eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. I started some coffee, too, and soon the aroma was enough to wake my friends. Corey and Sean were the first to come down, each with their own bedheads and sleepy smile. I set down a plate in front of them both and asked how they slept. But before they could answer, we heard a very loud and distinct scream. Noah was finally awake. He rushed down the stairs to us, crying about how Riley was dead in the bathroom. Corey and Sean both stood up quickly, seeing the blood spattered on his hands and wrists. My handiwork, of course. Sean made his way past Noah carefully to check on Riley and Sky. Sky was usually the second one down here. We heard him vomit from downstairs, and tears began to prick my eyes. I covered my mouth and backed into Corey, whimpering about how Riley told me they were fighting before, and Noah got physical. I didn't know what Sky had to do with it. Maybe she saw them fighting and threatened to go to the police. My words pierced his ears like nails, and my lungs drove them deeper until he didn't see a friend anymore. He saw a murderer. Corey pushed me behind him, and I carefully gripped his arm, whimpering and crying at the loss of my 2 best friends. Sean came running down the stairs, getting into a physical altercation with Noah. I begged Corey to leave with me, and he did. We ran to his car, got in, buckled our seatbelts, and left. Unfortunately for us, I cut the brakes while I was cooking. We were headed for a sharp turn, but you can't slow down if you don't have brakes. Corey turned the wheel so he'd take the majority of the force from the impact and died instantly. Who knew trees could kill? Luckily, I was left with a few bruises, a broken ankle, and a concussion. I climbed out of the wreck in time to see Sean stumbling from the house, bloodied and bruised. I didn't see Noah, which made my heart sore. I made my way to him, screaming and crying about how Corey wouldn't stop. He assured me that it would be okay. Noah was gone. He couldn't hurt anybody anymore. With that promise, we made our way down the road, hoping to find someone to help us. I smiled at Sean, and he smiled back. His plan worked. If we got caught, I'd take the fall for him. This is true love, isn't it? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. You can turn on post notifications if you so choose. And remember, all lost souls are welcome here.